I didn't knock, I let the December wind do it for me. Denver's Christmas Eve bit like a bad dog. 32 degrees and dropping. The kind of cold that sneaks through your bones and writes its name on your spine. I stepped out of the taxi and my boots sank into powder up to the laces. Across the cul-de-sac, lights twinkled polite little lies. But at 1420 Willow Run, my daughter's house, the lies were louder. Laughter clinked off crystal. A fire snapped. A Bluetooth speaker crooned something cheerful enough to make me want to sue it. I'm Margaret Cole, 65 and retired from competitive boxing. Which only means I now pick different things to punch, like forms, doors, and occasionally destiny. I came to surprise my girl, Clara, with a hug and a casserole that could bless or bruise, depending on how you spoke to it. What I found instead was a poinsettia turned into a snow hat and my daughter curled in a porch chair like winter had evicted her from her own life. Clara, her name escaped me as steam. She wore a thin blouse, the kind you put under a sweater you forgot to wear. Her fingers were blue at the knuckles. Her breath came out in quick, protesting clouds. When I touched her wrist, heat was a rumor. I peeled off my wool coat and wrapped her. Then the scarf. Then the hat. Every layer I had until I looked like a lopsided scarecrow with maternal rage. Mom, she whispered, small as a secret. I'm fine. Fine. If fine means shivering like a leaf in a freezer aisle. Inside, the Harris family, my son-in-law's people, were toasting near the fireplace like extras in an ad for Smug. I recognized Gregory Harris, retired judge and full-time authority impersonator, lifting a glass with the gravity of a courtroom and the warmth of a traffic cone. Marion, his wife, held red wine and a smile that said she'd rather be drinking something stronger, her own reflection. Their son, Daniel, my daughter's husband, that lawyer with a jawline like a warning label, stood there laughing. One hand in his pocket, the other holding a bottle and a grudge he hadn't earned. Samantha, the sister, leaned in with those sharp gloss lips, whispering little knives. I pressed my cheek to Clara's temple. It was cold enough to make me remember every winter I told her. Hats aren't optional. I tried to lift her. She tried to be light. We compromised. I carried her anyway. Through the picture window, I saw the table, the kind of spread that makes a cookbook blush. Golden turkey, cornbread stuffing stacked like little edible pillows, cranberry salad, ruby and righteous, a bottle of Cabernet throwing red stars on the ceiling. It was beautiful. Which is the worst thing cruelty can put on? A sweater of comfort over a heart of ice. Who put you out here? My voice didn't rise, it narrowed. Boxing teaches you that. Save height for guard. Make anger thinner than a blade. Clara blinked. I just needed air. Right. And I just needed a nap in a snowbank. She sagged, and I felt the tremor of weeks, months, of grief living in her muscles. There are different kinds of punches, jabs, crosses, hooks. And then there's silence, what people throw when they don't have the courage to use words. The Harris family were generous with silence and the kind of laughter that sounds like it pays taxes in other people's pain. I took 2 steps to the door. The Christmas music swelled like the house dared me to keep manners. I've got manners. I keep them in a drawer labeled, for emergencies only. My knuckles rapped, firm. Not hysterical. Nothing. I rapped again. The music didn't blink. I glanced at my daughter's breath. Thin as thread. And the threads inside me knotted. The door swung open on the 3rd attempt. Marion Harris stood there, haloed in warm light, holding her glass like a scepter. She eyed me. Then Clara wrapped in my coat. Then the snow melting onto her tasteful hardwood like I'd tracked in a felony. Well, she said, voice sweet and refrigerated. Margaret, what a surprise. If we'd known you were coming, we would have shoveled the porch, I offered. Heated compassion to room temp? Her smile pinched. Behind her, Daniel leaned in, shirt half-buttoned with the conviction of a man who believes rules are for parking meters. Mom, close the door. She'll be fine when she stops pretending. Pretending. The word landed like a dropped plate. I stepped forward. Marion didn't move. She expected me to shrink. I don't shrink. I distill. Listen carefully, I said, low, even, the way you talk to a fuse. You left my daughter on your porch in 32 degrees. I'm taking her inside. Now. You will do no such, Gregory started. drawing himself up to his old bench height. I didn't look at him. Authority works best when people pretend it's taller. Over Marian's shoulder, the fire spit. Samantha tittered. Daniel rolled his wrist. That lazy lawyer gesture that says move along. Everyone. The narrative belongs to me. My hand tightened around the doorframe. I could hear my old coach in my head, hands up. Chin down. Punch through. Not at. Age makes you practical. It also makes you dangerous. You run out of patience before you run out of principles. I shifted, got my hip under Clara's weight, and in one clean line of motion stepped across the threshold. Snow hissed on the heat of the floor. Somewhere, the speaker flipped to Silent Night. Irony clocked in for overtime. Marian's glass trembled. You are making a scene. I'm making a record, I said, and I only need 6 words to start it. Her eyebrows flickered. Daniel smirked. Samantha whispered, what 6 words? I squared my shoulders, looked at every Harris in that room, and let the sentence fill my mouth like a bell about to ring. Turn off the music and listen. The room froze harder than the porch outside. Even the fire crackled awkwardly, like it suddenly realized it was heating the wrong people. Excuse me? Gregory's voice rumbled, that old judge's tone meant to scare defendants into tripping over their own shoes. He forgot I'd retired from boxing. Not kindergarten, I said. I repeated, slower this time. Turn off the music and listen. Daniel snorted, lifting his wine bottle like it was Exhibit A in his case for arrogance versus humanity. You don't walk into my house giving orders. Margaret, my daughter nearly froze to death on your porch. I snapped, shifting Clara higher in my arms. I think the jury of common sense already ruled against you. Samantha tilted her head, eyes sharp and glossy. Clara always overreacts. She likes the drama, don't we all? She sipped her wine like cruelty was vintage. I set Clara gently on the couch, covering her with my scarf. Her teeth chattered faintly, a sound so small it could cut marble. Marian swirled her glass, calm as a pond filled with poison. She said she wanted air. Air doesn't frostbite the lungs. I shot back. Gregory finally stood, adjusting his tie like he was about to hand out a verdict. His frame filled the end of the table, his shadow falling across the turkey like a bad omen. Margaret, this is a family matter. You don't get to storm in here. Storming is when you bring lightning. I cut in. I brought proof. I lifted Clara's icy hand. See this? That's your neglect signing its own affidavit. The air thickened. Even the kids, Samantha's little ones, stopped giggling under the table. They peeked up, eyes wide, sensing something dangerous had crawled into the holiday cheer. Daniel moved closer, his smirk deepening. What do you want, Margaret? A medal for rescuing your daughter from a chair? She's weak. She's always been weak, and I'm not carrying that dead weight anymore. Clara whimpered faintly, her lips forming his name. Not in love, but in disbelief. My fist clenched, old muscle memory rising. Left hook, body shot, uppercut. My brain mapped the combo automatically. But I forced my hands flat against my thighs. Tonight wasn't about boxing. It was about breaking a different kind of opponent. You think weakness is needing help? I asked Daniel, my voice low, sharp. Then congratulations, son, you're the weakest man I've ever met. The room gasped. Even Marian's wineglass paused mid-sip. Daniel's eyes flared, the smirk cracking. He took a step forward, close enough that I could smell the sour burn of cheap Merlot on his breath. Say that again. I leaned in, meeting his gaze without flinching. I don't repeat myself for cowards. Gregory slammed a palm on the table. Silverware rattled like nervous witnesses. That's enough, he barked. Margaret, you will leave this house immediately. I looked down at Clara, still trembling under the scarf, her eyes begging me not to abandon her. Leave? I straightened, my voice steady. Oh, I'll leave, but not without my daughter. Daniel laughed coldly, over my dead body. My lips curved into the kind of smile I used to wear in the ring before the bell. Careful, I said, that can be arranged. And just then, through the frosted window, a familiar silhouette appeared, broad shoulders, police uniform, and a gaze that could cut through smoke. Jake had arrived. The knock came heavy. 3 thuds that shook the garland off the doorframe. Everyone inside jolted, except me. I knew that rhythm like I knew a jab to the ribs, steady. Deliberate. A promise before a fight. Marian frowned, hissing under her breath. Who on earth? I opened the door myself. There he was. Jake Turner. My old student. Once a wiry teenager who couldn't keep his guard up. Now a Denver cop with shoulders like steel beams. Snowflakes clung to his cap, melting down into a face carved serious. Evening, Miss Cole, Jake said, voice steady but edge. His eyes flicked from me to Clara curled on the couch. Then to Daniel, who suddenly looked like he'd swallowed a pinecone sideways. Jake, I said, relief slipping into my tone. Perfect timing. Gregory stepped forward. I'll judge again. Officer, this is a private gathering. Your presence is unnecessary. Jake didn't blink. Then maybe you can explain why I found footprints in the snow, small ones, leading straight to your porch chair. And an imprint the size of a body that sat there too long. Samantha scoffed. Are you implying? I'm not implying. Jake cut her off, his eyes like spotlights. I'm stating, Clara Cole was left outside in freezing weather. That's endangerment. That's negligence. And if I dig deeper, it might be abuse. The Harris table went silent. Even the turkey looked nervous. Daniel swaggered forward, trying to recover his smirk. Listen, officer, he drawled, putting fake warmth into his voice. Clara likes to play victim. She steps outside, acts frail, so people will pity her. My family's been patient, but... Jake's jaw flexed. So patient you let her risk hypothermia on Christmas Eve? He took one step into the room, boots stamping snow across the hardwood. You think pity is her problem? No, it's your cruelty. Daniel's nostrils flared. You don't know what you're talking about. Jake tilted his head, eyes narrowing. Funny, I heard it all. The room stiffened. Marian's grip on her glass slipped. Wine sloshing over the rim. Gregory's hand froze midair on his tie. Samantha's face drained color. What did you just say? Gregory's voice shook with anger. Not fear, yet his pupils betrayed him. Jake reached into his coat pocket and tapped a small black device. A recorder. The faint red light blinked. I was outside your window long enough to catch every word. Every insult. Every threat. The system might bow to your influence, Mr. Harris. But facts don't. And now you've got a witness. The Harris family stared, rattled for the first time all night. Daniel tried to laugh, but it cracked halfway through. A witness? Against us? Please, no one will believe. Try me, Jake interrupted, his voice slicing the air. Try a jury. Try the press. For the first time, I saw Gregory's fingers tremble as he tugged at his cuff. A man who'd sentenced hundreds suddenly realized the gavel wasn't in his hand anymore. I looked at Clara, who peeked up from the scarf. Her lips parted in disbelief. For the first time in months, maybe years, hope flickered in her eyes. I placed my hand on Jake's arm. Steady but firm. We'll need that tape, I whispered. Jake nodded once, already backed up. The Harris family sat frozen, like chess pieces mid-checkmate. But Daniel still leaned forward, sneering through clenched teeth. You think this changes anything? My father runs this city. You'll regret crossing us. I smirked, letting my words drop like a left hook. Funny, I was just about to say the same to you. And then, from behind me, Clara's fragile voice rose, quieter than a prayer, but stronger than a scream. Mom, I don't want to go back in that house ever again. Her words landed like a match on gasoline. The Harris dining room, with its polished oak table and glittering crystal, suddenly felt more like a courtroom about to witness its own sentencing. Clara's whisper, fragile but final, echoed louder than any gavel Gregory had ever slammed. Marian's painted lips parted in a gasp. Clara, darling, don't be dramatic. Families fight. It's Christmas. Families protect. I snapped. Families don't shove their daughter onto the porch like yesterday's leftovers. Daniel's smirk twisted. You're poisoning her against us. Margaret, she belongs with me. Clara's head lifted, just barely, her eyes red but fierce. No, she said, voice trembling yet sharp enough to cut glass. I don't belong to you. I never did. For a moment, silence. Even the fire seemed to bow its crackle. Then Samantha laughed. That brittle, high-pitched sound people make when the truth digs too deep. Oh, spare us. You'll be crawling back once the pity party ends. Who else would want a woman who can't even? Jake's hand shot up, palm out. Finish that sentence, he warned, his voice dropping low. I dare you. Samantha's mouth snapped shut like a mousetrap. Gregory regained his composure, puffing up his chest. Enough of this circus. Margaret, take your daughter and leave before I call in favors you won't survive. I squared my shoulders. Call whoever you want. But know this. I don't throw in towels. I throw punches. And I don't miss. Daniel lunged forward, eyes blazing. But Jake stepped between us. Back off. Counselor, don't test me tonight. The tension hung thick, like the whole house waited for someone to break first. My knuckles tingled, old instincts begging me to swing. But Clara's trembling fingers clutched my sleeve, grounding me. Her quiet plea was louder than the Harris arrogance. Mom, she whispered, her breath shaky. Can we go? Please, just take me home. I looked at her pale face, at the scarf slipping from her shoulders, and felt my heart harden into steel. Yes, sweetheart, I said, we're done here. Without waiting for permission, I lifted Clara into my arms again. The snow on my boots bled into their precious rug, leaving stains they couldn't erase. Jake held the door open, his eyes locked on Daniel's fury and Gregory's scowl as if daring them to try something. We stepped into the night. Cold air bit my cheeks. But compared to the poison inside that house, the winter felt like mercy. As I carried Clara down the icy steps, I heard Marion hiss behind me, "You'll regret this. Margaret, you'll regret taking her." I didn't turn back. My voice cut through the night like a blade. The only regret I'll have is not leaving sooner. But as the taxi headlights swung across the snowy street, I spotted something in the shadows, a dark sedan idling, engine humming low, watching us like a predator that wasn't done hunting. The sedan's headlights stayed dim, its outline half buried in snow. But my instincts screamed, that wasn't a neighbor waiting for carolers. That was surveillance, cheap, ugly, and deliberate. I tightened my grip on Clara. Jake, I murmured. He followed my gaze, one hand slipping subtly toward his radio. I see it. The driver didn't move, just sat, engine purring, exhaust puffing clouds into the frozen air. The way predators breathe. The taxi I'd called earlier slid into view from the corner. Cheerful little yellow paint cutting through the gloom. The driver hopped out, waving, oblivious. Ms. Cole, need help with luggage? Not tonight, I said, thrusting Clara gently into the back seat. Her head lolled against the headrest. Eyes heavy. She looked small, like the little girl I used to carry upstairs when she fell asleep with storybooks in her lap. Jake leaned toward me. That's not random, he said under his breath. The Harrises don't like to lose face. They'll try intimidation first. I smirked grimly. Then they're wasting time. I don't scare easy. Still, the hair on the back of my neck bristled. Boxing gyms teach you the hum of tension before a fight, the crowd. The ropes. The other guys stare. This was the same hum, only colder. Get in the cab, Ms. Cole, Jake said firmly. I'll follow up on that car. If they tail you, I'll know. Jake. He cut me off, eyes steady. You taught me never to back down. Let me return the favor. For a beat, we locked eyes, teacher and student. Years collapsed into one snowy night. Then I nodded, climbing into the cab beside Clara. The driver adjusted his mirror, eyes curious. Where to, ladies? Downtown, I said. Maple Street Apartments. As we pulled away, the sedan's engine revved. My gut twisted. The car eased forward, keeping its distance but never losing us. I stroked Clara's damp hair, whispering, "You're safe. I've got you." She stirred, half conscious, murmuring words that cracked me open. Don't let them take me back. Mom. My throat burned. Never, I promised. Outside, Christmas lights blinked on rooftops. Cheerful lies strung against the night. The sedan's shadow followed us all the way down Willow Run. Patient, persistent. Jake's cruiser swung in behind it, a hawk trailing a vulture. He flashed his lights once, subtle. A warning that didn't need translation. The sedan hesitated, then turned sharply at the next corner, vanishing into darkness. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. The taxi driver whistled low. Looks like you've got enemies. I stared out the frosty window, jaw clenched. No, I muttered. They've got me. And as the city skyline rose ahead, Clara's phone buzzed weakly in her pocket, one unread message from Daniel. Glowing like a venomous ember, "You'll pay for this." The message lit up the cab like a flare dropped in oil. "You'll pay for this." 3 seconds on the screen. Then it dimmed back into black. Clara flinched as if the words had teeth. She shoved the phone into my hands. Eyes wide, voice cracking. "Mom, he won't stop. He'll ruin you. He'll." I pressed a finger to her lips. "Sweetheart, listen. Men like Daniel build power on fear. And fear only works if we kneel." The taxi driver glanced at us in the mirror. Eyebrows raised. "Sounds like trouble." "Trouble," I said, staring at the faint glow of downtown Denver in the distance. "Picked the wrong mother." Beside me, Clara shivered again, shrinking into the coat. She was still fragile, but I caught something new in her eyes, relief. Like someone had finally told her she didn't have to fight alone. The cab rattled into Maple Street Apartments. A squat brick building with cracked steps and a buzzing neon sign that hadn't worked since the Reagan era. The driver helped me wrestle Clara upstairs. My old apartment smelled of chamomile tea and leather gloves, the way a coach's corner should. I tucked Clara into my bed, layering blankets like armor. Steam rose from the kettle on the stove. I poured cocoa, extra sugar, because sweetness is medicine when the world tastes bitter. She sipped slowly, her hands still trembling. "Mom, what if they come after you too?" I pulled up a chair, leaning close. "Then they'll find out I don't break easy. I've faced fists, judges, and winters colder than this family's heart. The Harrises don't scare me. They disgust me." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "You always sound like you're in a fight movie." "Correction," I said, patting her hand. "Life is a fight movie. And you're still in round 2. She chuckled faintly, then winced, clutching her ribs. My chest tightened. She wasn't just emotionally bruised. She was worn, hollowed by grief and cruelty. Before I could press further, a knock rattled the door. 3 sharp taps, urgent, official. Clara froze, her mug clinking against the saucer. "They found us," she whispered. I stood, fists clenched out of habit. "Stay here." The knock came again, louder. I yanked the door open, and there was Jake. Snow dusting his shoulders, his breath sharp in the hall light. His eyes darted past me, locking on Clara. "Miss Cole," he said, voice low but steady. "We need to talk. I've got something you'll want to see." He held up a manila envelope. Thick, stuffed, dangerous. Inside that envelope was the first crack in the Harrises' fortress, a secret that could burn their empire down. I shut the door fast, sliding the bolt, then nodded for Jake to come inside. The envelope hit my kitchen table with a weight that didn't match its paper. Clara sat up in bed, pulling the blanket to her chin, eyes wide and fearful. "What is it?" I asked, already bracing. Jake peeled the flap open and pulled out photos, receipts, and a flash drive. He spread them across the table like a gambler showing his winning hand. "Financial records," he said. "Bank transfers, shell companies. Gregory Harris has been moving money for years, quietly, under the radar. The kind of money that doesn't belong to him." I leaned closer, scanning the statements. Offshore accounts, signatures, wire transfers that could buy and sell this apartment building 10 times over. My fists curled. So the great Judge Harris is just another thief in a suit. Jake nodded grimly. "And Daniel's name is on a few of those transfers. He's not just complicit, he's helping launder." Clara's voice quivered from the bed. "So, they'll come after us harder, won't they?" Jake turned, softening his tone for her. "Clara, this is leverage, the kind of leverage that evens the playing field. They can scare, they can threaten, but once this hits daylight, their empire collapses." She pressed her blanket to her face, muffling a sob. "But they own the court. Jake, you saw what happened last time. The judge, he didn't even hear me." I walked over, kneeling by her bed, brushing her damp hair from her face. "Sweetheart, judges can be bought, but public opinion? That's a jury nobody can bribe." Jake slid the flash drive across the table toward me. "This has everything. If something happens to me, you take it to the Denver Tribune. I've already got a journalist contact waiting." I pocketed the drive without hesitation. "If something happens to you, Jake, they'll have to come through me first." For a moment, the 3 of us just breathed in the same fragile space, me, my daughter, and the boy I once taught to keep his guard up. Only now he was teaching me how to keep swinging when the fight left the ring. Then Clara whispered the words that cracked my chest. What if they come tonight? The room went still. Jake's jaw tightened. He moved to the window, pulling the curtain aside just an inch. Snowflakes spun under the street lamp. Across the street, a dark sedan sat idling again. Same shape, same hum, waiting, watching. Jake turned back, voice hard. They already did. And the next knock on our door wouldn't be Jake's, it would be theirs. The hum of that sedan crawled under my skin like a mosquito I couldn't swat. Clara's breath quickened. She clutched the blanket tighter, whispering, "Mom, they won't stop. They'll never stop." I placed a hand on her shoulder, steady as I could manage. "Let them knock," I said. "Doors swing both ways." Jake moved to the door, loosening his holster. His eyes flicked to me. "If they're here tonight, they're testing how far they can push before we push back. We hold steady, no panic." A beat later, it came. Bang, bang, bang. Not polite knocks, fists pounding, rattling the hinges. Clara whimpered. I stood tall, fists flexing like I was back in the ring. "Open it, Jake." Slowly. He did. 2 men stood in the hall, dressed in dark wool coats, the kind that scream money with a criminal aftertaste. One had a jaw like granite, the other eyes like wet gravel. "Miss Cole?" the granite one asked. Voice oily, rehearsed. "We're here on behalf of the Harris family. They'd appreciate if you returned what doesn't belong to you." Jake's shoulders squared. Funny, I thought what didn't belong to them was half of Denver's pension fund. The gravel-eyed man smirked. "You talk too much, officer." I stepped forward, chin high. "Tell Gregory he can have his money back when he digs it out of hell himself." The granite man's smile thinned. "Careful, pride is expensive, and your daughter's already cost more than she's worth." Before Jake could react, my fist flew, years of muscle memory snapping alive. A clean left hook connected with Granite's jaw. He staggered back, shocked, slamming against the hallway wall. His partner lunged, but Jake pinned him fast, twisting his arm until he yelped like a dog caught in a trap. "Tell the Harrises," I growled, standing over them. "Next time they send rats, I won't stop at bruises." Jake shoved the gravel-eyed man out the door. Both stumbled, muttering curses, retreating toward the sedan. The engine roared and carried them into the dark. Silence fell heavy in the apartment. My knuckles throbbed, alive with old fire. Clara peeked from behind the blanket, her eyes wide. "Mom, you just knocked him flat." I cracked a grin, flexing my sore hand. "Guess the old left hook still works." Jake chuckled despite himself. "Remind me never to spar with you again." But then his expression hardened. The reality crashing back. They won't give up. Tonight was just the opening bell. I looked at Clara, her frail body trembling, her eyes begging me for safety I wasn't sure I could promise. Then I looked at Jake. Steady, determined, carrying the fight in his stance. And I swore, right there under the humming light of my shabby kitchen, the Harrises picked the wrong family to break. Because tomorrow, the fight wouldn't be at my doorstep, it would be in their courtroom. Under their rules, and I was ready to flip the table. Morning felt like a dare, a pale, hungover light that crept through my blinds and dared the world to be braver than last night. I brewed coffee thick enough to chip the frost from a window and sat at my kitchen table like a general reviewing maps. The flash drive lay under my palm, warm from my body heat. Its plastic a small volcano of possibility. Clara moved slowly, as if the air itself conspired to pull her back into sleep. Jake stayed nearby, eyes already riffling through legal names and contact lists in his head. We had a stack of choices: hide, run, scream to the papers, or go on the offensive. None promised peace, all promised movement. "Have you thought about a restraining order?" Jake asked, practical like a medic. "It's paperwork," I said, bitter. "Paperwork doesn't stop men with money and an itchy sense of ownership." I tapped the flash drive. "This does." My voice sharpened. "This can start a fire that even Gregory can't smother with a robe." Clara swallowed and tried to smile. "If we go public, they'll smear me. They'll say I'm unstable. They'll say I made it up for cash." Her words were small stones. She'd already heard blame enough to build a dam of shame. "You won't be alone," Jake said. "I've got a reporter on standby. She hates injustice the way you despise burnt garlic." He smirked. trying to lift the mood with ridiculous metaphors. It worked for a moment. Clara's lips twitched. We planned like conspirators and like mothers. We drafted timelines, backup copies, safe houses, and a rota for who would answer the door if someone knocked. I even got my old boxing notebook out. Plans are rules in a different language. By noon, Mr. James, our lawyer, arrived, smelling faintly of expensive cologne and quiet competence. He sat at the head of my little table, leafing through Jake's packet with the kind of focus that makes judges nervous in suspense movies. "You have enough here to file for civil fraud," he said after a long moment. "And if the recordings are admissible, we'll push for harassment and abuse recognition." He tapped the stack of bank records. "We will need witnesses. We'll need corroboration. The more public this goes, the better our chances of keeping the Harrises on the defensive." Public. The word felt both like promise and threat. We could put their skeletons under lights and let the city chew on them. But we'd also invite vultures, gossip, slander, the kind of headline that chews up survivors and spits them out. I thought of Clara, tender, wounded, and my jaw hardened. "Then we make sure we control the narrative," I said. "We tell the truth, we hold facts, and we don't play their game." I looked at Clara squarely. "You ready to be loud, sweetheart?" She closed her eyes and nodded. "Slow as winter melting. I'm tired of hiding." We called the reporter. Her first question, "Are you sure?" Her voice carried no judgment, only hunger for truth. We were ready to feed it. Jake went to back up files to secure servers. Mr. James prepared affidavits. And I called old friends, people who still remembered me as more than a retired coach, community leaders. One former student who ran a local radio show. And a woman from the church who baked dangerous pies. By evening, we'd set the hook. The Tribune agreed to look. The radio host would run a midday segment. We weren't naive, this was chess. And they would play dirty, but chess can be won if you don't let the opponent move with impunity. That night, I walked Clara to the window. Across the street, I saw Gregory Harris' house, lights on. Conservative, smug, like a fortress with a wreath. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt something bubble up that wasn't pure fear. It was raw, stubborn, stubbornness wrapped in love. "You think they'll fight back?" Clara asked, voice small. "They'll do what the powerful always do," I replied. "They'll try to make the victim the villain. They'll smear, threaten, maybe even try to buy silence. But we've got one thing they can't purchase: truth." I pressed my forehead to the glass. The world outside looked brittle and beautiful. Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then looked up with a half grin. "That sedan? It's been traced. Owner's shell company 2 towns over. Not their best disguise." He waggled his eyebrows like a man who'd found a loose thread on a fancy suit. "We've got them on camera leaving the night they sent their goons." I laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised me. "Good. Let them squirm." As midnight crept close, the city hummed with its holiday sleep. We sat, 3 unlikely conspirators, dialing lawyers, drafting statements, and rehearsing Clara's testimony like an actor rehearses lines. Not for fame, but to survive. When I finally climbed into bed, exhaustion hit like a wrestler, heavy, honest, and oddly satisfying. I drifted off with the flash drive under my pillow. A small battery of defiance. But the next morning's headline wasn't what we expected. Instead of the Tribune breaking the story, a whisper turned into a rumor, and then, painfully fast, an anonymous smear began to spread online that painted Clara as the manipulative one. The Harrises had struck back. The morning smelled like burnt coffee and betrayal. I cracked open my laptop, expecting to see the Denver Tribune prepping their bombshell. Instead, the first headline that blinked at me nearly made me spill my mug. Local woman fabricates abuse claims against respected Harris family. Sources say she sought payout. Clara stood behind me, pale as frost, one trembling hand on my shoulder. "No," her voice cracked. "Mom, that's not true. I know, sweetheart," I said quickly, but my chest clenched like a fist. The article had no byline. Just the cozy anonymity of a smear. Phrases like, attention-seeking, and mentally unstable, littered the paragraphs. Sharp enough to slice reputations. Jake slammed his palm against the table. Damn it, they moved faster than I thought. Someone inside the Tribune must have tipped them off, or worse. The Harrises bought the silence. Clara backed away, hugging herself. It's happening again. They're making me the problem. They're making me worthless. I spun around, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. You are not worthless. You're the reason we're fighting. That article? It's just noise. Lies shouted into the wind. And lies don't last when the truth decides to scream. Mr. James, already scrolling on his tablet, muttered, "They're good at this. Spin doctors, friendly editors. They've crafted a narrative before we even filed our claims. If we wait too long, the smear sticks." Jake leaned in. "Then we don't wait. We go live. Tonight." I frowned. "Live?" He nodded, determination blazing in his eyes. "Social media. Streaming. Forget the papers. We tell Clara's story ourselves. Raw, unfiltered, in her voice. The people decide who to believe." Clara's hands shook. "Me? On camera? What if I break down? What if I say the wrong thing?" I cupped her face, forcing her to meet my eyes. "Sweetheart, the truth doesn't need to be polished. It needs to be felt. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be honest. And if you cry, let them see, let them feel it." For a long moment, silence. Then Clara inhaled, shaky but deep. "Okay, I'll do it." By afternoon, Jake had set up a simple livestream rig in my living room, just a laptop, a ring light, and a microphone. Nothing fancy. Authenticity doesn't need glitter. I stood beside Clara as she sat before the camera, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Jake counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked on. Clara swallowed, her lips trembling. "My name is Clara Cole," she began, voice fragile but clear. "And for years, I've been living in silence. This Christmas Eve, my husband's family left me outside in the cold while they celebrated by the fire." She lifted her hand, showing faint frostburn on her knuckles. "I was told I was useless. That I was broken. That losing 4 children made me unworthy of love." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "I'm speaking now because I don't want any other woman, any other daughter, to feel what I've felt. I don't want silence to be mistaken for weakness anymore." Jake adjusted the camera as the livestream comments began to pour in, angry emojis, hearts, words of support flying across the screen. "We believe you, Clara. Stay strong. Expose them." Clara took a deep breath and ended with the words that made even my throat close. "I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for the truth. Please don't let them bury me in lies." She clicked off. The red light faded. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then Jake's phone buzzed furiously. Notifications lit the screen like fireworks. The video was spreading, fast. Clara looked at me, tears streaming. Did I do okay?" I pulled her into my arms, whispering against her hair, "You didn't just do okay. You lit a match they can't put out." But even as the views climbed, a new notification flashed across Jake's screen, an encrypted message warning. "They know where you are." Jake's face tightened as he read the message. He angled the phone so only I could see. "They know where you are." I clenched my fists. "Let them come. I've got 2 good hands and 40 years of muscle memory." Jake shook his head. "Margaret, this isn't a ring. They don't play fair. They won't come with fists, they'll come with lawyers. Cops in their pocket. Maybe worse." Clara overheard, her eyes wide with fear. "Mom? Jake, what if they drag me back there? What if they lock me away until everyone forgets?" I cupped her face, steadying her trembling chin. "Sweetheart, look at me. You're not going back. Not tonight. Not ever. They'd have to fight through me. And I promise you, they'd lose." The ring light was still warm from the live stream, casting a faint glow across Clara's pale face. For the first time, she didn't look only broken. She looked like someone holding a flicker of belief. Jake paced near the window, peeking between the curtains. "That sedan's back," he muttered. "Engine running. Same spot. They want to rattle us." "Let's rattle back," I said. Before he could argue, I strode to my old wooden trunk by the wall and pulled it open. Inside, relics of a life lived in sweat, my coach's whistle, faded hand wraps, a pair of gloves scarred with old leather. I tossed the gloves onto the table like cards. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Planning on sparring with them?" I smirked. "No. Planning on reminding myself who I am." The gloves weren't for fists, they were for fire. For grit. For walking into storms with your chin down and your will up. I didn't need to hit anyone tonight, I just needed to remember I still could. Clara let out a shaky laugh. You're ridiculous, Mom. Totally ridiculous. Ridiculous keeps us alive, I said. Jake's phone buzzed again, this time not a threat, but a call. He put it on speaker. A woman's voice came through. Sharp and urgent. Officer Turner? This is Rachel from the Tribune. I just saw Clara's stream. Listen, we've been pressured to bury your story. But now it's viral. The public wants more. We're running an exposé tomorrow morning. But be careful, the Harrises know it's coming. Jake glanced at me. I nodded slowly. Good. Let them know. Let them choke on the countdown. Clara swallowed hard. Mom, if they know, won't they try to stop it before morning? I squeezed her hand. Probably. Jake holstered his weapon. Jaw tight. Then tonight, we stay awake. The three of us sat together. Backs straight. Watching shadows crawl under the door and headlights sweep across the curtains. The apartment felt less like home and more like a bunker. But for the first time, Clara wasn't curled small. She sat between us, fragile but upright, like a fighter in her own corner. And when midnight struck, the silence broke, not from outside, but from Clara's phone buzzing with a name we never expected, Daniel Harris. Calling. The phone vibrated on the table. Daniel's name flashing across the screen like a curse. Clara froze, staring at it as though it might explode. Don't answer, Jake said immediately, his voice hard. But Clara's hands trembled toward it anyway. What if he says something we can use? What if he finally admits? I grabbed her wrist gently but firmly. Sweetheart, men like Daniel don't confess. They calculate. The buzzing stopped. Silence returned like a held breath. Then, a ping, a voicemail. Jake motioned for me to play it on speaker. I did. Daniel's voice spilled out, dripping arrogance. Clara, you think your little video makes you a hero? It makes you pathetic. The world's laughing at you, and tomorrow, the Harris name will bury whatever scraps of dignity you think you have left. Come home while you still can. Otherwise, he paused, the silence itself a threat. Otherwise, don't blame me when things get worse. Much worse. The voicemail ended with a faint clink of glass he'd been drinking. Clara covered her mouth, eyes brimming. Mom, he'll never stop. I pulled her close, my jaw tight. Then we don't stop either. Jake crossed his arms, pacing like a caged tiger. That message is intimidation. We can log it, add it to the file. But he's not bluffing. They'll push harder tonight, before the paper hits the stands. The air in the apartment thickened. The old radiator hissed, a weak soldier against the cold. Outside, the sedan still idled, waiting like a patient vulture. I stood, walking to the window. They want us scared, they want us quiet, but I've fought men heavier, faster, meaner than Daniel Harris, and you know what? They all bled the same when the bell rang. Clara let out a broken laugh. You're comparing my husband to one of your sparring partners? Exactly, I said, a smile tugging my lips. And I always knew how to find their weak spot. Jake finally stopped pacing. Then we find theirs tonight. If they're watching, let's give them something to choke on. He set his laptop on the table, typing fast. Lines of code scrolled by. Cameras flickered to life, the building's security feed. Grainy but enough. On screen, headlights glowed from the street. The sedan. 2 men inside, waiting. Jake smirked. Gotcha. We sat shoulder to shoulder. 3 unlikely allies watching the watchers. Every second stretched tight as a drum. Clara leaned against me, her breath shaky but calmer than before. For the first time, she whispered, Mom, thank you, for not giving up on me. I kissed her hair. Sweetheart, I'd fight the whole damn city for you. And as the clock ticked toward 1 a.m., the sedan's headlights flickered and the passenger door opened. A man stepped out, tall and broad, carrying something in his hand. Not a weapon, a folder. And he started walking straight toward our building. The figure trudged through the snow, every step deliberate, the folder tucked under his arm like contraband. Clara's nails dug into my sleeve. Mom, what if it's more threats? Jake leaned closer to the security feed, jaw clenched. Or what if it's leverage? Sometimes enemies deliver their own poison without knowing it. The man reached our building's entrance. He didn't buzz. He slipped something into the lobby mailbox. Glanced over his shoulder once. Then hustled back to the sedan. The engine revved, tires crunching, and the car vanished into Denver's icy veins. We exchanged a look. Jake grabbed his jacket. "Stay with Clara. I'll get it." Minutes stretched like hours until he returned. Snow dusting his hair. He dropped the folder on the table. The seal read, "Confidential, Harris and Associates." Clara's voice cracked. "That's Daniel's firm." I flipped it open. Inside were typed transcripts, receipts, and, my blood ran cold, screenshots of text messages. Not between Daniel and Clara. Between Daniel and another woman. Jake whistled low. Well, looks like Mr. Harris isn't the loyal husband he pretends to be." Clara's hands trembled as she skimmed the pages. He called her, my real future. He said I was, a liability. Her voice broke. He said he'd wait for me to crack so he could file easy divorce papers. I pulled the folder from her hands before the words shredded her any further. My anger burned hot. Controlled. This is it. This is their fracture. The perfect family image, shattered from the inside. Jake nodded. "If these are legit, we've got Daniel on marital fraud. Combine that with the financial laundering, and the Harris castle looks a lot more like a sandpile." Clara covered her face, sobbing quietly. "All those years, I thought if I just tried harder, maybe he'd love me, but he never." I wrapped my arms around her. My voice steady. "Sweetheart, you were never the problem. He was. He always was." Jake spread the papers out, scanning for patterns. This wasn't dropped by accident. Someone on the inside wants Daniel to burn. Maybe a scorned associate. Maybe the mistress herself. Whoever it was, they've handed us dynamite. I let out a slow breath. My fighter's instinct sharpening. Then tomorrow, we light the fuse. Clara lifted her head, tears streaking her cheeks. But in her eyes, finally, a spark. Not just pain, not just fear, something harder, something like resolve. But before we could celebrate, Jake's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. "Nice find. Too bad you won't live to use it." The text glared up from Jake's phone. A digital knife aimed straight at us. Clara gasped, clutching my arm. They know we have the folder." Jake locked the screen, jaw tight. "Which means somebody's watching us closer than we thought." He moved to the window, sweeping the curtains aside in one sharp motion. Nothing but a snow-smeared street. Silent and blank. The sedan was gone, but its absence felt worse, like a predator slipping back into the dark. I forced my voice steady. "Let them threaten. Threats don't scare me. Silence does." Jake turned, eyes burning. "This isn't just intimidation, Margaret. It's escalation. They wouldn't risk leaving that folder unless the family war is spilling over. Someone inside the Harrises wants Daniel exposed, but someone else wants to make sure we don't live long enough to do it." Clara pressed her hands to her temples. "It's never going to stop. Every time I breathe, they're there." I crouched in front of her, gripping her cold fingers. "Listen to me, sweetheart. You've survived their cruelty for years. That makes you stronger than them already. Tonight, we stop reacting. Tonight, we strike back." Jake spread the documents across the table again, scanning quickly. "If we leak the affair alongside the financial fraud, it destroys Daniel's credibility. Even Gregory's old judge friends won't protect him from public disgust." Clara hesitated, voice a whisper. "But if we do this, they'll come harder. They'll ruin everything. My name, your career, Jake's job." Jake cut her off, his tone fierce. "Then let them try. I'd rather lose a badge than watch them destroy you in silence." The radiator hissed louder, filling the pause. I looked at both of them, the daughter I'd carried through storms, and the student who'd become a shield beside me. My chest swelled with a strange mix of rage and pride. "All right," I said. "We take the fight to them. But on our terms." Jake nodded slowly. "I can get this folder scanned, duplicated, and sent to 5 different safe locations by morning. Even if they torch this apartment, the evidence lives." I smirked grimly. "Then let's make sure they know the fire's already out of their hands." Clara swallowed hard, tears streaking down but her chin lifting just a fraction. "If I go public again, will you both stand with me?" I took her hand. "Sweetheart, we'll be on either side of you. No Harris in hell could break that line." Jake glanced at his phone again. Then at me. But brace yourselves. If they threatened us once, they'll try more than texts next time. And right on cue, the building lights flickered, once, twice, before plunging the entire apartment into darkness. Dark swallowed the apartment like a grin. The radiator's whisper died. Even the little hum of the refrigerator seemed embarrassed into silence. For a second, we just breathed, 3 heartbeats in the same dark. Power cut? Clara whispered, voice small in the thick quiet. Jake moved fast, the way cops do when silence turns suspicious. He flicked his phone to flashlight. A cone of pale light skittered across the table, illuminating the folder like a guilty thing. They know how to make a tidy exit. He muttered, classic intimidation. Cut the lights. Rattle nerves. I tapped the flash drive in my pocket, feeling its plastic edge like a talisman. Then we give them something to rattle back. Jake's hand went to the radio at his belt, old habit. He keyed it low. A check-in to someone on patrol. Static answered like an old friend. Then a voice, soft, terse. Turner. Status? Lights out at Maple Street. Jake hissed. Possible harassment. We're secure. The radio crackled. Backups 5 minutes out. 5 minutes can feel like 5 days when someone's trying to unmake you. I set my jaw. Then we buy those 5. Jake slid across the table, lining up the photos from the folder. The receipts. The messages. He whispered. If they sabotage the power, they'll try to claim it's coincidence. We document everything, every flicker, every knock, every call. Clara hugged herself, eyes hollow in the flashlight glow. I keep thinking, what if the system fails me again? You won't find out tonight, I said. We'll be louder than any blackout. I stood, pulled the kettle from the stove, and lit the old camping lantern I kept for power outages. Its warm, honest light filled the room and chased away some of the cold that creeps under your skin when the world goes dark. The bulb's small halo made shadows behave. Suddenly the apartment felt like a war room. Not a coffin. Jake called in favors, his supervisor, a patrol car, and a contact at the utility company. He moved like a man who'd been trained to stitch holes before they grew into tigers. While he worked, I brewed another pot of coffee. Sugar for Clara, black and stubborn for myself. The ritual of normal things steadied us. Outside, distant engines thrummed, a nervous chorus. The sedan's engine was absent, either gone or lying in wait. For a second I pictured Gregory Harris in his study, tapping a message into a phone with fingers wrapped in privilege. The thought made bile rise. But I kept it down. Rage is a good fuel, fear is a poor driver. The patrol car's headlights carved a path across the street. 2 officers trudged up the steps, boots stomping in snow, breath fogging the night. Jake greeted them at the door with a curt nod. We've got files, threats, and a follower car, he said. Keep it discreet. One officer, young and earnest, scanned the room, eyes landing on the folder and the computer. We'll keep watch, ma'am, he said to Clara, voice steady. You call us for anything. Thank you, Clara breathed, and for the first time I heard genuine relief in her tone. Not the brittle hope that folds, but the sort that breathes. Hours crept by like careful spies. We documented everything, timestamps, calls, the incendiary text to Jake, the voicemail from Daniel, the anonymous threat. Jake uploaded copies of the folder to secure servers and seeded encrypted backups to multiple trusted people. The flash drive lived between my palms like a coiled promise. At dawn, the patrol car left with the rising sun. The light returned to the apartment slow as forgiveness. Sleep crept in tired and small. But it arrived. We didn't sleep like the innocent, we slept like soldiers on watch, eyes tired. Muscles relaxed enough to dream, ready to wake at the first sound. When I woke, pale gold spilled over the curtains. My phone buzzed with updates. The Tribune was running an editorial by Rachel. The reporter, careful, damning, and true. The headline read, Power, Prestige, and Privilege, a family under scrutiny. Clara stirred beside me, hair mussed, cheeks flushed. She opened the door to her small kitchen and found a stack of messages, support, prayers, offers to testify, offers to help with childcare or housing. People were calling, showing up in ways that didn't come with strings. The tide was shifting. I took Clara's hand and squeezed. See? I said softly. Truth finds ears. Jake peered at his phone. Eyes narrowing. They're on the ropes. But they'll try something big, legal. Loud. And ugly. We need to file before they gaslight the town. I nodded. Then we file. We walked into the courthouse that afternoon not as victims but as a small army, Clara. Pale but resolute, Jake. Steady as a rock, Mr. James with his legal briefcases like armor, and me. Margaret Cole, the old coach who never left her corner. The first hearing would set the tempo. And the Harris family? They were already polishing their armor. The Denver courthouse loomed like a frozen fortress. Its marble steps glazed with winter salt. I tightened my scarf around Clara's shoulders as we climbed. She leaned into me, pale but upright. Beside us, Jake's stride was clipped, military precise, one hand brushing the edge of his belt where his badge gleamed. Mr. James trailed behind, 2 briefcases in hand, documents. Affidavits. Evidence, the paper equivalent of heavy artillery. Inside, the air smelled of polish and tension. Security wands beeped. Heels clicked. Lawyers rehearsed arguments under their breath like hymns. Clara's hand gripped mine so tightly my knuckles whitened. But I let her squeeze. Sometimes strength is just refusing to unclench. Then we saw them. The Harrises had arrived early. Naturally. Gregory in a charcoal suit. Polished to intimidation. His silver hair gleamed under the fluorescent lights. His jaw set in the practiced mask of a man who'd judged too many lives to notice his own sins. Marion sat beside him, lips crimson, a fox fur collar hugging her neck like a crown. Samantha hovered just behind, her perfume sharp, her smirk sharper. And then Daniel, Clara's husband, in a tailored navy suit, straightened his tie and smirked as if the courthouse was merely his second living room. When Clara saw him, her breath stuttered, her knees threatened to buckle. I slid my arm around her waist, steadying her. You're not alone, I whispered. Daniel's eyes flicked over us and landed on Clara. He mouthed a single word, pathetic. Jake's jaw flexed. One step closer and I swear. Not here. I cut him off. We win in the ring we've chosen. This ring. We filed into the courtroom. The judge assigned wasn't Gregory's golf buddy. Thank God. She was a middle-aged woman with glasses perched low. A no-nonsense stare that could peel wallpaper. Her nameplate read Judge Alvarez. Court is now in session. The bailiff droned. Mr. James rose, introducing Clara's petition, emotional abuse, coercive control, financial exploitation. He laid out the folder of receipts, transfers, and Daniel's texts to his mistress. Each page like a jab thrown clean. Gregory's lawyer, slick, young, smug, countered fast. Your Honor, these so-called documents are circumstantial. Mrs. Cole, he gestured to Clara with theatrical disdain, has a documented history of depression. Our experts believe her perception is unreliable. Clara flinched. I clenched my fists so hard I felt the sting of nails on palm. But Judge Alvarez leaned forward. Depression does not equal unreliability. Counsel, stick to evidence. The smug lawyer faltered. The Harrises stiffened. My chest loosened a fraction. Then Jake stepped up, his uniform crisp, his voice steady. He swore under oath and recounted what he'd witnessed Christmas Eve. Clara left outside in 32 degrees while the Harrises feasted inside. He described her frailty, her trembling, the cruel words that bled through the windows. The courtroom shifted. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Daniel's smirk cracked. Marion's hand twitched around her pearls. Gregory's eyes narrowed, cold as sleet. For once, it wasn't Clara on trial, it was them. I reached for my daughter's hand under the table. Her fingers trembled, but this time they didn't shrink. They pressed back, faint but real. And just as Judge Alvarez called for the first recess, a bailiff rushed to her bench with a folded note. She read it, frowned deeply, then looked straight at us. Mrs. Cole, there's been a security concern. I'm ordering you and your party to a private chamber immediately. The gavel struck once, sharp as a gunshot. Recess, Judge Alvarez announced, though her eyes never left us. She gave a subtle nod to the bailiff, who motioned for us to follow. Clara's grip on my arm tightened. What's happening? She whispered, her breath shaky. Jake positioned himself at our flank, already scanning exits, his hand hovering close to his holster. Stay calm. It's a precaution. but his jaw was tight, like a man tasting trouble before it hits. The private chamber was a narrow room off the main hall, lined with bookshelves that smelled of old paper and polish. Judge Alvarez entered behind us, note still in her hand. She shut the door firmly. She spoke low, clipped. No patience for ceremony. Someone sent a message to the court clerk this morning. Anonymous. It reads, she unfolded the paper. If Clara Cole testifies, she will not leave this building alive. Clara's knees buckled. I caught her before she fell, holding her trembling frame against me. Cowards, I hissed. That's what they are. Cowards hiding behind notes. Jake stepped forward, fire in his eyes. Judge, we can trace this. I'll coordinate with courthouse security. Check the cameras. Sweep every corridor. Alvarez shook her head slowly. I've been on this bench long enough to recognize intimidation tactics. The Harrises are trying to rattle you. But hear me well, I will not allow threats to silence this courtroom. Not under my watch. Clara's lips quivered. But what if they mean it? The judge's gaze softened for just a moment. They probably do, which is exactly why you must keep speaking. Justice doesn't belong to the fearless. It belongs to those who refuse to be silenced even when they're afraid. Her words lodged deep in me, like the voice of an old coach at ringside. Chin down, eyes up, keep swinging. Mr. James finally broke his silence. Judge, will you grant protective custody for my client? Alvarez nodded, effective immediately. Officer Turner, you'll be primary. Court security will supplement. We'll proceed after recess. But Mrs. Cole will not be left alone. Jake squared his shoulders. Understood. I turned to Clara, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. Sweetheart, this is how you know you're winning. They're scared enough to threaten you. That means your truth already shook their walls. She swallowed hard, whispering, I don't feel brave. I squeezed her hand. Bravery isn't a feeling. It's what you do while you're terrified. The judge handed the note to Jake for evidence. Then opened the chamber door. Recess ends in 10. Be ready. We stepped back into the hallway. The hum of murmurs hitting us like static. Reporters craned necks. Onlookers whispered. The Harrises sat clustered near their table. Daniel's smirk returning like a mask. He thought the note had landed. I met his eyes across the room. He raised his glass of water in a mock toast. I didn't flinch. I mouthed back one word. Coward. And when the gavel struck again, the first witness called to the stand wasn't Clara. It was someone none of us expected, the Harris family's former housekeeper. The bailiff's voice rang out, cutting through the courtroom buzz. Call to the stand, Mrs. Lillian Brooks. Clara's head jerked up, her eyes widened. Lillian? She whispered, barely audible. From the gallery, a frail woman in her late 50s shuffled forward, her hands clutching the strap of a worn leather purse. Her shoulders sagged. Her coat was 2 sizes too big, and the deep lines on her face looked carved by years of scrubbing other people's floors. Daniel's head snapped toward his father. Gregory. A flash of panic cut through his mask. Quick but real. Gregory's lips moved just once. Why her? Before he leaned back stiffly in his chair. Lillian raised her right hand, voice trembling but clear as she swore the oath. She sat, folded her hands on her lap, and glanced once toward Clara. A flicker of sorrow crossed her eyes before she turned back to the judge. Mr. James approached. Mrs. Brooks, you worked for the Harris family for how many years? 14, she said softly, her voice carrying just enough. And during those years, did you witness how they treated my client, Clara Cole? A ripple spread across the gallery. Cameras clicked. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Lillian's hands twisted in her lap. For a moment, she looked down, torn between fear and truth. Then her chin lifted, as though she'd decided she had nothing left to lose. Yes, she said, louder now. I saw it all. They mocked her, left her outside in the cold, called her barren. I brought her tea once, when she was crying in the laundry room. And Mrs. Harris, her gaze flicked to Marion, slapped the cup out of my hand. Said, don't encourage weakness. Gasps scattered like gunfire. Marion's face went white, then flushed crimson. She leaned toward Gregory, hissing something sharp enough to sting. Mr. James nodded gravely. Mrs. Brooks, why didn't you come forward sooner? Lillian's eyes welled, because they made sure I had nothing if I left. They ruined references, blacklisted me. I cleaned motel rooms to survive after I quit. But when I saw Clara on the news, shaking outside on Christmas Eve, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The gallery erupted with murmurs. Half disbelief, half outrage. Judge Alvarez banged her gavel. Order, order. Across the aisle, Daniel sprang up, his lawyer grabbing his sleeve. Your Honor, this woman is bitter, unstable, her testimony is poisoned by resentment. But Judge Alvarez's stare froze him mid-sentence. Sit down, Mr. Harris. Clara clutched my hand, her nails biting into my skin. For the first time in months. Her tears weren't just from pain, they carried relief. Vindication, the fragile beginning of hope. And in that moment, watching Marion's mask crack, Daniel's smirk falter, and Gregory's composure slip, I knew the Harrises were bleeding. But then Lillian added one more sentence, one that made the entire courtroom gasp and even Jake's head snap toward her. I wasn't the only servant who saw. One of them recorded everything. The courtroom froze. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz louder, feeding the silence after Lillian's words. Judge Alvarez leaned forward. Mrs. Brooks, did you say recorded? Lillian's throat bobbed as she swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. The Harrises had another housekeeper, Miguel Torres. Young man, quiet. He was there the night they locked Clara outside. He showed me once, on his phone, a video he'd taken. He said one day it might matter. Daniel shot to his feet, his chair screeching back. Objection, hearsay. But Judge Alvarez's gavel cracked down like thunder. Sit down, Mr. Harris. You'll have your turn. The gallery buzzed with whispers. Phones clicked. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Clara turned to me, her lips trembling. Mom, if that video exists. I squeezed her hand, my own heart hammering like a war drum. Sweetheart, it could change everything. Mr. James leaned on the lectern, steady and calm. Mrs. Brooks, do you know where this Miguel Torres is now? Her gaze dropped to her lap. No, he left their service 6 months ago. I heard he went back to New Mexico. But, she hesitated, then looked straight at Clara. He told me if anything ever happened to her, I should find him. The air thickened with the weight of possibility. For once, the Harrises weren't smirking. Gregory's jaw ticked. Marion's hand trembled against her pearls, and Samantha's lips parted in a hiss of panic. Jake leaned toward me, his voice low, urgent. If that video's real, it's the smoking gun we've been praying for. But finding Miguel could take weeks. I stared across the aisle at Daniel, whose mask of arrogance was cracking under sweat. Then we start tonight. Clara gripped my arm, her whisper fierce despite her fear. Mom, if we find him, they won't just threaten us. They'll come after him too. I looked into her eyes. Steady, then we'll protect him, just like we protect you. Judge Alvarez cleared her throat, breaking the tension. Mrs. Brooks, thank you for your testimony. Court will adjourn for today while both parties prepare further evidence. She slammed the gavel once. Firm. This trial is far from over. The room erupted, reporters shouting questions. Cameras flashing, voices clashing like steel. Through the chaos, Daniel leaned across the aisle. His words a venomous whisper only I could hear. You'll never find him, and if you do, he'll wish you hadn't. I didn't blink, I just leaned closer, my own whisper cutting through like a blade. Pray I don't. That night, back in our dim apartment, Jake spread out a map on the kitchen table. His finger traced a line south. Miguel Torres, he said, last known address, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Snow still clung to our boots when we returned to the apartment. Clara curled up on the couch, her eyes hollow from exhaustion yet alight with something new, hope. Fragile but stubborn, Jake cleared the kitchen table, snapping open his laptop and unfolding a battered road map that looked like it had survived 3 decades of glove compartments. Here, he said, his finger landing firmly on a red pin stuck in the state of New Mexico. Santa Fe, Miguel Torres. Former address, last confirmed 6 months ago. Clara frowned. 6 months is a long time. What if he's gone? Jake looked up. Steady. Then we find where he went next. People don't vanish without leaving ripples. I studied the map. The distance between Denver and Santa Fe stretched wide. Miles of mountains and desert between. I felt the weight of it pressing down, another journey. Another fight. but my chest tightened with resolve instead of fear. Then we drive at first light. Clara sat up suddenly, panic flickering in her eyes. No. If they catch us on the road, if they know we're looking for him, they'll... Her words crumbled into silence. I knelt in front of her, taking her trembling hands in mine. Sweetheart, listen. They want you paralyzed. They want you afraid. But we've got something stronger than their threats. A lead. We can't ignore it. Jake leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. She's right. And I'll make it official. Protective custody extends to travel. They can't stop us from crossing state lines. If anything, it forces the Harrises to play dirtier. And dirtier means sloppier. A faint smile tugged at Clara's lips. You two sound like you're planning a tournament match. I grinned. That's because it is. Same rules. Protect your guard. Look for openings. And never, ever quit. Jake chuckled softly, though his eyes stayed sharp. Except here. The opponent cheats, bribes the referee, and hires half the crowd to boo. Good thing I never cared much for applause. I muttered. The room fell into a quieter rhythm. I brewed chamomile tea for Clara, poured black coffee for Jake and myself. Outside, Denver's winter night pressed against the window, cold and watchful. Inside, the three of us leaned over a map like generals plotting a campaign. Clara finally whispered, "What if Miguel doesn't want to help? What if he's too scared?" I met her eyes, firm. Then we remind him what's at stake. Not just your life, but his chance to live without fear. 2. People don't record truth unless some part of them wants it seen. Jake tapped the folder on the table. The one with Daniel's texts and receipts. Tomorrow we roll south, but tonight, we rest. I nodded, though my fists still itched for action. Rest was part of the fight. 2. But just as we settled in, Clara's phone buzzed with a new message, no number. No name, just a single image, Miguel Torres. Standing in front of a small grocery store in Santa Fe. Timestamped yesterday. The glow from Clara's phone lit her pale face. She turned the screen toward us with trembling hands. The picture was grainy, caught from across the street. But clear enough, Miguel Torres. Older than I remembered him from Lillian's description. Standing outside a corner grocery with a paper sack in one arm. The timestamp in the corner read yesterday. 3:14 p.m. Jake leaned forward, his voice a growl. Somebody wants us to know exactly where he is. Question is, why? I studied the photo, my gut tightening. Miguel wasn't looking at the camera. He wasn't posing. Someone had followed him, close enough to snap-proof but far enough not to be noticed. This isn't a breadcrumb, I said slowly. It's bait. Clara's lips parted, her voice cracking. You think they're trying to lure us out? To trap us? Jake nodded grimly. That's exactly what I think. They dangle Miguel like a carrot. We drive south. They set the ambush somewhere in between. Textbook intimidation play. I set my coffee cup down, hard enough to make it clink. Then maybe it's both, a trap and the truth. Miguel is in Santa Fe, and their betting fear will keep us here. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. Mom, if we go, what if we don't make it back? I crouched in front of her, locking eyes with her trembling gaze. Sweetheart, if we don't go, they win without even lifting a finger. You've already lived years in their prison. It ends now. Jake rubbed the back of his neck. Pacing. We'll need to be smart. No direct routes. No credit cards. Cash. Burner phones. And I'll call in a favor with a buddy at New Mexico State Police to keep an eye out. If it's a trap, we spring it on our terms. I smirked. Sounds like a road trip I can get behind. Clara let out a weak laugh, half tears, half nerves. Only my mom would call this a road trip. I squeezed her hand. Every fight is a journey. This one just happens to come with bad coffee and long miles. Jake's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, then showed me the screen. Another message, from the same unknown number. Tick-tock. Coach, the desert swallows secrets fast. My blood ran hot. They thought they could scare me with sand and shadows? I'd trained fighters who stared down champions twice their size. I'd walked through winters colder than forgiveness. No desert would bury my daughter's truth. I straightened, my voice iron. At dawn, we head to Santa Fe. But when dawn broke and we packed the car, a thin envelope was waiting under the windshield wiper. Inside, a single bus ticket to Santa Fe, in Clara's name. The envelope flapped in the cold wind like a warning flag. Jake snatched it from the windshield and ripped it open. Jaw set tight. Inside lay a crisp bus ticket, Denver to Santa Fe. Departure that very afternoon. The name printed across the top in bold letters, Clara Cole. Clara staggered back as if the paper itself burned. How did they know? I scanned the empty street. Every parked car suddenly suspicious. They don't just know. They're watching close enough to toy with us. Jake held the ticket up between two fingers. This isn't about travel. It's a message. They're saying, we control the route. We control the destination. Clara's breath hitched. Then maybe we shouldn't go. I turned to her sharply. My voice steady but fierce. Sweetheart, this is exactly why we must go. Every step you take toward truth, they'll shove harder to push you back. But the only way out of a cage is forward. Jake slid the ticket back into the envelope. We don't use it. We take our own wheels. Our own route. No schedules. No predictable stops. I've already mapped a back road through Taos. Less traffic. Fewer eyes. I tightened Clara's scarf and brushed the hair from her face. You'll ride in the middle seat. Jake drives. I'll watch the mirrors. They think they're hunters, but they've never seen what happens when prey fights back. For the first time, a small flame lit in Clara's eyes. You sound like you're heading into a championship bout. I smiled grimly. That's because we are. And this one, we don't plan to lose. By mid-morning, we'd packed the essentials, clothes, cash, copies of evidence sealed in zippered folders, and enough snacks to fuel nerves through the mountains. Jake checked his sidearm twice, then tucked a burner phone into the glove compartment. Clara slid into the back seat, knees drawn up, clutching the photo of Miguel. She whispered, please let him still be there. As Jake turned the ignition, I rested a hand on her shoulder. If he's not, we'll keep looking. But today, we begin. The tires crunched over snow. The city shrinking behind us. Denver's skyline faded into open road and sky that seemed too wide to hold secrets. The envelope with the bus ticket sat crumpled in the dashboard tray, a taunt we refused to answer. Hours passed. The road winding south through mountains dusted in white. Clara dozed against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Jake's eyes stayed sharp, scanning every mirror. I sat stiff in the passenger seat. Every mile a reminder. Danger wasn't behind us, it was waiting ahead. By the time we hit the New Mexico border, the first shadow appeared, a black SUV that slid into the lane behind us and refused to pass. The SUV's grille loomed in the mirror. Too close, too steady. Jake's knuckles whitened around the wheel. They're not here for sightseeing. Clara sat up in the back seat, eyes wide. Are they following us? Relax, I said, though my pulse thudded like a drum. If they want us rattled, we don't give them the satisfaction. Eyes forward, breathing steady. Let them wonder if we even noticed. But Jake's voice was tight. They're pacing us. Every lane change I make, they mirror. If this was random, they'd have passed by Taos Junction. Snow gave way to dry earth. The road narrowing through stretches of desert. I cracked the window, the air was sharp. Filled with sand and sage. The kind of place where secrets could sink deep and never surface again. Desert swallows secrets fast, I muttered, remembering the text. My fists clenched. Not this time. Jake tapped the dash. There's an exit ahead. Service road through the hills. If they follow us there, it's confirmation. He veered off sharply, tires spitting dust. The SUV hesitated, then slid after us like a shadow refusing to let go. Clara's breath quickened. Mom, what if they run us off the road? I twisted in my seat to meet her eyes. Sweetheart, calm your breath. Remember what I taught you. Fear gives them the fight before it starts. We don't hand it over. The road narrowed into scrubland. No cars, no signs, just two vehicles, ours and theirs. Jake muttered, I don't like this. They're waiting for us to panic. I leaned forward. Then let's do the opposite. He glanced at me, then back at the mirror. Meaning? Meaning, I said, a smirk tugging my lips. We bait them. Before Jake could argue, I pulled the flashlight from the glove compartment, flicked it on, and angled it out the window. A sudden beam slashed across the SUV's windshield. The driver swerved, horn blaring. Jake barked out a laugh. Coach, you're insane. Insane wins fights, I said. The SUV backed off a few yards. Lights flicking once, communication. They weren't ready to ram us. Not yet. They wanted to see where we'd run. Jake pressed the gas. Let them follow. Because when we get to Santa Fe, I want them close enough to choke on what we find. Clara clutched the seat, whispering like a prayer. Please, Miguel, be real. 2 hours later, as dusk bled across the desert sky, we pulled into Santa Fe. And there he was, Miguel Torres, sweeping the steps outside that same grocery store from the photo. Santa Fe glowed under a dusky sky. Adobe walls painted orange by the last streaks of sun. The grocery store sat on a corner, small and quiet, its neon sign flickering against the gathering dark. And there, broom in hand, head bent, was Miguel Torres. Same face from the photo. Older now, but unmistakable. Clara's breath caught. It's really him. Jake parked 2 blocks away. Engine idling low. The black SUV slid past us. Too casual, then disappeared around the corner. Watching, waiting, eyes up. Jake muttered, "We've got maybe 5 minutes before they circle back." I opened the door. Desert air sharp in my lungs. Then let's make them count. Clara hesitated. What if he doesn't remember me? What if he refuses? I placed a hand on her shoulder. Sweetheart, he carried truth in his pocket for months. People don't do that unless they want it to matter. He'll remember. We approached the store. Miguel looked up, suspicion flashing in his dark eyes. The broom stilled mid-sweep. "Senora Cole?" he said, voice low, as if he half believed a ghost had walked out of the past. Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Miguel, it's me, Clara." His face tightened. He glanced around, then hurried us inside, locking the door behind. The shop smelled of spice and dust. Shelves lined with tortillas and canned beans. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed. "They'll come. They always come." Jake squared his stance. "They already followed us. That means you're in as much danger as we are. We need your help." "Miguel, the video, you still have it?" Miguel's hands shook as he gripped the broom handle. For a moment, I feared he'd say no. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes," he whispered, "on an old phone. I hid it. I was too afraid to show anyone. But I couldn't erase it." Clara's eyes flooded with tears. "Please, Miguel, if we don't show the world, they'll keep winning." Miguel studied her face, the pain, the fragility, the strength fighting beneath. At last, he exhaled hard, like a man surrendering to fate. "Come," he said. "It's in the back." He led us past the stockroom into a tiny office with peeling paint. From a locked drawer, he pulled out a battered smartphone. Its screen cracked. He powered it on, thumb trembling. And then, there it was. Grainy video, but clear enough. The Harris's voices sharp, cruel. Clara's frame shivering on the porch. The laughter inside. The slurs. The mocking. Proof. Jake's eyes burned. This is the nail in their coffin. But before we could breathe relief, headlights flared through the office window. The SUV. Back again. Doors slammed. Heavy footsteps crunched on gravel. They hadn't come to shop, they'd come to collect Miguel. The crunch of boots on gravel made the walls tremble. Miguel's face went pale. "Dios mío, they found me." Jake drew his weapon, his stance sharp, every muscle alert. "Everyone stay behind me." I stepped forward anyway, fists curling. "No, they want fear, we give them fire." Clara clutched my sleeve, whispering, "Mom, please, don't." But I only squeezed her hand once. "Steady, sweetheart, you're not the one who needs to be afraid tonight." Through the window, shadows shifted. At least 3 men, heavy coats, moving with the slow precision of people who believed they owned the ground they walked on. A voice called from outside, oily and cold. "Miguel Torres, hand over the phone, and nobody gets hurt." Jake barked back. "This is law enforcement property now. Step away." The men laughed, the sound scraping like knives. "Law enforcement?" one sneered. "Boy, your badge won't mean much when you're buried in sand." Miguel trembled, clutching the battered phone to his chest. I took it gently from his hands, slipping it into my coat pocket. "Not today," I murmured. The front door rattled once, twice. Then, bang, a shoulder slammed against it, making the frame shake. Clara gasped. Jake aimed steady, voice sharp. "Back off. One more step and I'll shoot." For a heartbeat. Silence. Then the footsteps retreated. Tires squealed outside. The SUV roared. Fading into the desert night. Jake exhaled, lowering his weapon slightly. They're not gone. Just regrouping. I pulled the phone from my coat and held it up. Then we don't waste time. We get this uploaded. Everywhere. Tonight. Miguel's eyes glistened with fear and relief. Senora, if they know I helped. I put a hand on his shoulder. Then they'll know you had courage they never will. Clara stepped closer, her voice breaking but firm. Miguel, you saved me. You don't know it, but you did. He looked at her for a long moment. Then bowed his head. Then maybe it was worth keeping. Jake checked his watch. We move now. Safe house in Albuquerque. Wi-Fi. Encryption. By dawn. This goes public. I nodded. And when the world sees it, the Harrises will finally face the storm they created. But as we piled back into the car, Clara turned to me, her voice trembling with something deeper than fear. Mom, what if the truth isn't enough to save us? The desert stretched endless before us. The night wind carrying Clara's question like a ghost. What if the truth isn't enough? I turned in my seat, meeting her eyes in the dim glow of passing headlights. Sweetheart, I said, voice steady though my chest ached. Truth doesn't always save us. But it saves the fight. And that's what makes tomorrow possible. Jake pressed harder on the gas. The old sedan humming like a tired soldier. The cracked phone with Miguel's recording sat plugged into his laptop. Uploading piece by piece to servers spread across the country. Progress bar crawling. Our lifeline inching forward. Clara hugged herself in the backseat, whispering, I just wanted a family. I just wanted to belong somewhere. I reached back, clasping her trembling hands. And you do, right here, with me, with Jake, with every person who refuses to bow to the Harrises' cruelty. That's family, not blood, but love that stands and bleeds beside you. Miguel rode silent, eyes darting to every shadow outside. At last, he muttered, they will come after me now. They already did, Jake said firmly, eyes fixed on the road. And you're still breathing, that's a win. The laptop chimed once, upload complete. Files duplicated, encrypted, scattered across digital horizons. Unstoppable now. We all sat in stunned silence. Clara let out a sob that turned into laughter. Ragged but real. Miguel crossed himself. Even Jake's jaw unclenched. I leaned back, closing my eyes. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. Not gone but lighter. The Harrises could send threats, cars, or shadows, but the truth was already loose. Running wild where no chain could hold it. Dawn bled over the horizon, painting the desert in fire and gold. Clara rested her head against the window, a faint smile curving her lips. Mom, she whispered, barely audible over the engine. Thank you, for not letting me break. Tears blurred my vision. I squeezed her hand. Sweetheart, I'd fight the world to keep you whole. And as the sun rose higher, chasing shadows from the sand, I knew the battle wasn't over. The Harrises would claw, scream, and twist, but they couldn't unmake what was done. The truth was out, and so were we. No system, no courtroom, no title of power can erase cruelty once it's exposed. But courage, raw, trembling, stubborn courage, can strip tyrants of their armor. The night taught me this. Families aren't built from silence, but from voices that rise even when shaking. And love, fierce and unrelenting, is the sharpest blade against injustice.